Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I have a PhD in nothing. Okay, hi. I'm Rebecca, and I'm here to talk about why millennials wearing skinny jeans should be a crime. Just kidding. I'm here to talk about why the concept of millennials and all generations is fake, but why you will continue to hear about it for the rest of your life, and why that's wrong. And you know, just to caveat, is this still working? Okay. Just a caveat, I was born in 1992, so if you're one of the people that is like, oh, that means she's like, if you have baggage with that, yeah, you have that right. I would never try to take that away from you. Yes, I'm a cringe millennial. So anyway, I want to start with something that started the most recent iteration of the so-called generational wars. And I'd like to take you back to the summer of 2020, which was just like a really amazing time, and nothing was wrong. It was awesome. And in between all that amazingness, this tweet went viral that was just like, I saw these TikTok comments, and I feel like y'all should know. And you know, part of the reason I think it went super viral was because like for the past like 10, 15 years, there was this big stereotype of millennials being like, they're lazy, they're selfish, they're terrible employees, so don't hire them. But this was the first time that I feel like we got to see on a larger scale like what younger people than us felt about it, which is like, it's more crushing, because if young people are in charge of what's cool, then like this is like, oh, they really do think that we are like this, which is, I just made this little graphic in case that you didn't know what a millennial was. Yeah, soy face, that's soy face. It's my favorite one. So obviously like, these are, you know, all these very popular stereotypes of being a millennial. We are poor, and we are obsessed with Funko Pop dolls, and are Disney adults, and have wine tattoos or whatever. And obviously these draw on a lot of stereotypes about being like sort of like a white middle class, like late 20s to 30s person. And obviously these stereotypes just completely ignore any diversity whatsoever, because that's how that works. So this started like a whole thing, because, you know, millennials decided to get very upset about this, and were making these very embarrassing comeback raps, white women, of course, directed towards Gen Z. And someone even made a musical, which I've included 3 frames from, but it's like the worst thing I've ever seen, so I will not be showing it to you guys. And when this became sort of like a bigger thing, then, you know, which then meant like people like me who, you know, my job is to like report on this bullshit, to explain to you guys, to people who have lives, that makes us have to pay attention to it, and therefore, you know, proliferate it further. And you know, it's just sort of like everyone just gets in their head this idea that like there is this generational war going on, when this literally just started as a random couple comments in a Twitter or in a TikTok video, which is not at all a thing. And you know, that's because obviously people get really outraged about stuff and like love to feel like they're the victim. And therefore we get a lot of, you know, like anchors on Fox News or whatever being like, Gen Z is dunking on millennials. And it's like, no, they were just making a very weak joke. Anyway, so that's where we get things like this. You know, so basically now whenever anything kind of new happens, it's like, Gen Z invented this thing and it's actually bad for you. Even though, you know, whatever. And like, so you'll hear, you know, invented trends like chuggy, whatever. I didn't want to use that word, but here we are. So it's basically like a narrative that a lot of people just like to like hop on because it makes you riled up over nothing, and it feels really good. But to back up, you know, there's this big Generations don't exist, y'all. The bigger concept, obviously generational wars don't exist, but generations don't exist either. So fun fact, the US Census Bureau only recognizes one generation. Can you guess which one? Living? Did someone say living generation? No, it's boomers. And because you can actually see on a graph, there were just more babies born in the post-war era. It was babies being born was a cause of a thing that was happening. And so you can see that on a graph. So that's why I don't think okay, boomer is a fair thing to put on this, because we were right. We can be mean to boomers. It's okay. Just kidding. And so beyond that, no one really knows what counts as a generation. In theory, it's okay when those people become of childbearing age, but the last 3 generations we've sort of marked have been in 15-year increments. And most babies are not born to high schoolers. So, doesn't really make sense. And beyond that, oh, yeah. The other thing is people use this justification for talking about this in the sense that the moon landing happened when these people were teenagers. Therefore, they all turned out this one specific way. That is also something that that has nothing to do with when you were born. It just changes a lot of people's lives regardless. And as much as we would like to think that history sort of happens in these 25-year increments, it just doesn't really happen that way. And another thing is that every time another group of people enter the age where they can be in offices, there's all these think pieces that are they're lazy and they're bad employees, but it's maybe they're just 22, and of course college students are gonna be fucking terrible office workers. So why do these still persist? Why do we keep hearing about millennials and Gen Z and whatever? And the reason is because people are making money off of this. Because there's a lot of there's a whole marketing arm devoted to decoding Gen Z, what do 22-year-olds want? It's the same thing that 22-year-olds have always wanted. And there's this one guy on TikTok his whole thing is this is what it's like being a millennial with a job. And it's that's everybody with a job. Having jobs sucks. But I think the other reason why we kind of keep seeing this stuff, and it sort of just has to do with what the internet always kind of picks up and runs with, and that's deciding on your own niche identity markers. And you can see this anywhere. My favorite example is obviously ADHD. The amount of TikToks that I've seen that are just put a finger down if you get distracted sometimes. You have high-functioning ADHD. It's okay, maybe. But, maybe you're just a person. And, and these same conversations just happen in cycles because on Tumblr and on Twitter and on TikTok, because as soon as you just get that many people in a room or in a digital space, they're gonna just talk about the same things because humans just aren't that interesting. But these are never gonna end because there's really no right answer. Yeah, we all kind of exist on the generational anxiety sexual spectrum. These things just are not really that black and white. And so, to use a very millennial example, if there was an easy answer for any of this, there would be no BuzzFeed quizzes, and who wants to live in that world? And so I think this is pretty harmless for the most part, honestly. But obviously labeling people in these huge generalizations is not very nice. But I think the bigger problem is that when you fall into either one of two traps, which is when you're sort of in that old fart realm, when you're just every generation that's after me is lazy and entitled, whatever. It's boring. And then the other one, which progressives love to do, is Gen Z is gonna save us. They're so good. But it's, but no, they're just regular people. And it's just I think we just love looking at the inspiring things that certain young people do, and they're that's it. They're gonna do it. They'll finally fix it. Because it kind of absolves us, and then we get to be how do you do, fellow kids? And like both of these responses are just us grappling with the fact that like humanity is just going to go on. It's just going to chug on after we leave, and we won't probably have that much of an impact. Anyway, so I also think that the problem with this is that it keeps us from focusing on what we all have in common as people, no matter when we were born, and that's like all of these really fun things. Like we are still going to have massive economic divides. We're going to have huge gaps in who the rich are, who the poor are, who the most extreme political views are, who falls for online misinformation, because it's going to look different from one generation to the next. And the amount of like turfy TikToks I've seen from like teenagers is really gross on my For You page. And honestly, all this is really doing is to just sort of like divide more people and help marketers sell dumb books that don't say anything. So in conclusion, I firmly believe that you should still be able to make fun of other people. For instance, being 29, which is what I am, it's just like the most embarrassing age to be. Same with 41, 42. I can't really articulate why, but it just like is. And finally, yeah. So was this stupid? Yes. But thank you for coming to my TED Talk.